Welcome back to Open Studio. So what do you guys think of this Premiere thing? Is this better or worse? You can let me know, and you can yell at me right now because I will be in the comments with you. So I like it. I like being around for the Premiere so I can take comments and questions and get various foodstuffs thrown at me. So that's always good. So I think I'm going to leave it at this 8 o'clock premiere time, unless, you know, everyone decides that they don't like it, and then I can move it back to just a regular release. But anyway, let's get on with it. So we've got the blade all prepped, all ready to go. So now what I'm going to do is, if you've watched me do any of these like black and white paintings live, a lot of this will make sense to you because you've seen me do a lot of this before, and where a lot of this paper cut photocopy, kind of the way I lay it out, where that came from are these razor blades, because you can't use, or it's difficult for me to use like any kind of adhesive masks on this. It's difficult to draw it out first. You know, you can't really sketch this small, at least I can't. So I needed a way to kind of get things locked in the beginning, and this is what I came up with. So what you can't see off the side because you're super zoomed in is I was just cutting a bunch of these photocopies. So I had them all ready to go. That's what I was doing there. So let me put one up above just so I have it. So I don't know, can you see that? Probably not. It's up the top right here, but I just keep one nearby just so I can kind of use it as a reference. And what I'm going to be doing is, as I'm cutting things out and moving things around, I will, what am I going to do? I will put the cutting mat in place, like I'll just put it up in front or move the razor blade so you can see what I'm cutting out. Like now. What I do first is I usually grab the background first, and in order to get the background I just cut out the car and use that as a mask. These razor blades, they're a lot like the miniature paintings, and then again, this is where I kind of learned all this from, just kind of from doing it. What I find is if you can get someone to kind of lock in from far away, if they can, even if it's a tiny painting, if they can kind of tell what it is from far away. Oh, interesting. I have to fix that. What's happening is there's a little speed bump parking lot thing right here, and it's cutting off the bottom of the tire, so I didn't see that, so I kind of clipped it off, so I'll have to fix that later. But back to what I was saying. So if you can get them to kind of see the image from farther away, say if you're walking through a gallery and you see this painting, if you're 2-3 feet away but you can still tell what it is or tell that something's going on, that's the first, like the first grab. If I can do that, then it really sets up the rest of the painting, because what happens is people will see something going on there, and then it'll kind of draw them in a little bit closer. And then once they really see what's going on, then they get closer and closer until their nose is right on the glass. And that's what I'm going for. So in order to do that with something this small, you need to really almost simplify things more than normal. Now it isn't always the case. When I did the Manhattan razor blade or the Boston razor blade, those cityscapes on razor blades, or the Grand Canyon, there was another good one. There's so much going on there that it's difficult to simplify something like that. So there are instances when that doesn't happen. But on the same note, you know, the New York painting had this beautiful sunset, and it just made sense. You know, you could see what it was from far away. You couldn't tell what city it was, but you could see what it was. And that's what helped pull people in. The Grand Canyon painting is a different animal. That also has a great sunset in it, but I also used actual stone and dust from the Grand Canyon in the backdrop. So that has the extra element of something going on, so it pulls people in. So with this guy here, the car is bright red, which is great. So I'm going to tone down the background. I'm probably going to make the background gray and, you know, grays and whites and black and that kind of thing, so that this car really pops off, and that way someone will be able to see it immediately from far away. And that's what we're going to do. All right, so it's cut out, but it's not completely cut out. There's some tabs holding it in, which is actually pretty good, because that's going to allow me to center this thing on the blade where it should be. Now again, I set this up in Photoshop. For doing all these blades, you would think I would have some sort of razor blade template in Photoshop, but I've just never got around to doing it, which would be ideal, because not only could I do them to size, but I could also have the holes and the slots in them on the side, so I really knew where things were when I'm arranging it. But what I find is, again, like we talked about, I'm using different brands of these blades, and sometimes the notches are in different spots, the holes are a different size. So having a template and then trying to keep track of what blade that template goes to, it's just as easy to get it close and then just do the adjustments on the fly like I'm about to do. All right, so I get this kind of lined up, which is okay. You don't have to get it perfect, because I'm going to pull the background and take a look at it. And again, a lot of these adjustments are on the fly. So, you know, I'll kind of like pull it and then look at it. I'm going to pull those little bits that are holding it in place. So where I have this lined up, the rear end of the car is just touching the edge, and I don't want that. So I'm going to leave one of the magnets, and I'm going to rotate this up a little bit to get that off of the background. But I don't want to lose this tail light either. So here's the notch right here. So I'm just going to push it up until that bottom part clears and I still see a little bit of the tail light. So that's really good right now. I'm happy with that. This front side, the only thing I'm really worried about the front side is I want to be able to get the wheel, some of the wheel in here, and I've got plenty of it. So I think I'm okay there. And then I'm not touching up here. The idea is basically, well, I want to fill the blade with this car, but sometimes it's like a part of a car, like the front end or the rear or whatever. In that case, it's the same kind of setup. I just, you know, have a couple different things to work with, essentially. And again, it's all about missing certain things. Like the hole is where it is. I know I'm going to lose a lot of the back wheel, but in this photograph, I'll slide it down so you can see, the wheel is in the shadow anyway, so it's pretty much just a dark circle, which is great because I don't mind losing that. It would be nice to have it in, but again, like I was talking about before, you can't have it all. You know, there's some compromises that need to be made. Make sure this is supremely focused, because you guys are on this thing. You guys are right on this thing. All right, the top part of this car is light. And so that means I'm going to have a dark area on the top to set it off, and the bottom area is going to have shading and shadow, so I'm happy making that lighter. It's already white, so I'm good there. So I think I'm going to start just by kind of putting a darker fade in on the top. Also got a really nice spot right here for the signature too. I don't often take that into consideration when I'm setting these things up, and I'd pay for it at the end of the painting, because I'm like, all right, now what do I do? Where do I sign this thing? But this one has a nice spot for it, so I'm pleased with that. All right, so for this, now, talk a lot about the reduction of paint and all that fun stuff in all these videos. You know, how far do you reduce these paints? It is true, the paint needs to scale with the object that you're painting. So if I'm doing a wall mural, the paint can be super thick because the resolution of those little dots, the minute particles that are broken down by the airbrush, on a wall, it's essentially like a TV monitor. You know, you have a certain resolution. Those dots can be really big and the image is still going to be amazing. On something on this scale, if I don't get the atomization down as fine as it'll go, this whole thing will look pixelated essentially. So to do that, I got to use a really over-reduced paint often. So it slows things down in a way, but it also keeps the whole painting scaled. And that is your super secret trick for the day with these. You know, it's nice to be able to use the same paint for everything, but you can't always use the same reduction for everything. All right, so I have 1 part paint to 20 parts reducer, which is, as I often say, is violently reduced. Shake that up and put a little bit of that in the brush. Now, as far as the shading, I think I'm going to go straight across. Again, this is a composition thing. It's a nice trick to do. I'm just thinking out loud. It's a nice thing to do because if certain things need to be accentuated, like if the front of this car was really bright, but the back of the car is really dark, this is kind of like that, I can put a lot more dark against the lighter part of the car up here to kind of pull that out. Same thing if it was reversed, you just reverse it. So you can do a lot with it. Instead of just putting a random fade on this, you can use that fade to really pop things out. The top of this car is really light, so I really do need a lot of darkness up there. But I don't need a lot of darkness in the back of the car. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of angle it this way, have it the darkest part up here, and then just fade out. Get this going. And then again, this is 1 to 20 mix, so it's really, really thin. So as a result, I have to put this on in extremely light layers. If I push this at all, it's going to flood out and it's going to make a mess. So it's lots and lots of light layers, and just keep going over it to let it build up, nice and slow. And again, I'm going to fade this out because I want to leave the back kind of on the lighter side, because the tail end of this car has a black insert around the tail lights, and there are shadows on the back of the car which will keep it on the dark side too. So again, that's the composition thing. It'll help areas pop out and keep this whole thing rolling. As far as the front of the car though, I can make it fairly dark. I think that's probably going to be good right there. Now the shadow under this car is pretty tight. Again, I took this in the middle of Las Vegas. It wasn't quite summertime, but it was warm. Move the light a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. So the shadow under this is pretty tight, but I don't know that I'm going to leave it as tight as it is in the reference photo. A really big shadow from the light, which I don't like. There we go. So I'm just going to build up the shadow underneath the car and just kind of let it be what it's going to be. So it'll have a slightly softer edge than the reference photo, but I think that's really going to work. Same thing for the back of the car. The back of the car is, I'm assuming this car is lowered. It's difficult to tell because the wheels are bigger than the normal wheels. This is a GT500. So I'm just going to kind of drop the shadow in the back. And again, that'll solve that trying to figure out what's going on with the shadow, which I don't have in the reference photo on the back of the car because of that yellow parking bump, whatever that is. And I have to fix the wheel already. I know that the back tire is screwed up, but that's okay. I'll get that. All right, I'm good with that. I'm good. All right, I think that's it. Now there's right in this corner here, and this happens a lot. Right in this corner here, there's a shiny bit because it's scuffed off, or I hit it with the sandpaper and didn't do a good job catching it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a little bit of the Autoborn sealer, and I just kind of dumped it out. Not dumped it out, I put a drop just on the piece of paper here. It's off the side, but you don't need to see it. You just know that it's a mess. And then what I'm going to do, just like the other corner, I'm just going to kind of touch this corner with the Autoborn sealer just to seal that up. Again, remember this part of the blade is steel. I don't want any of this exposed. Not that, I mean, it isn't like this thing is going to like rust out and then the painting's going to fall off, but any chance you can to make sure and ensure that your painting is archival throughout is the way to go. And I see another scuff right on the bottom of the blade too here. So and we're gonna kind of deal with that in a second as soon as I get the scuffs done. All right, I'm happy with that. I gotta let that dry a little bit. Now, really carefully, I got to pull these the magnets off. And carefully, because I don't want them to scratch the paint I just put on. That 20-to-1 is a lot of fun to use because it's really atomizes fine, but it's also extremely fragile. It scratches off really easy because we've compromised it by thinning it out so much and removing a lot of the ratio of binder to paint. So there we go. I'm very happy with that. Think about it this way, and I think I've mentioned this before if you've seen it. If you have a gallon of house paint and you know it takes 5 gallons of paint to paint one side, but you're going to stretch it out by turning that 1 gallon into 5 gallons by adding a bunch of water to it, imagine what your paint job looks like and how long that's going to last. It's the same thing, just on a smaller scale with this stuff. So keep that in mind. All right, that is really fantastic. I like it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move the reference photo off for a second. And we are going to ensure that this thing stays where it should. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. As soon as I find a brush that I can use. Here we go, this will work. So what I'm going to do, so the background, essentially right now the background is done. That's how fast it happens. That's why these blades don't usually take more than, 12 to 13 hours-ish, sometimes less, sometimes more. But for a car portrait, I don't have to really worry about the background because it's secondary to the painting. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use as I drop it, UVLS satin, and this is the correct ratio for this clear. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clear all of this with the UVLS. The UVLS will give it strength so that those edges I'll have a better chance of not scuffing those edges off with the UVLS on it because I'll put a couple good coats on it, and that's going to work. Now, what I should be doing is allowing it the 15 minutes to cure between coats, but we still have 13 minutes to go, so I don't want to do this and have us sitting around not doing anything. So what we'll maybe do is prep some of the other templates while I'm waiting for it to cure. Because again, this is the same as the Autoborn sealer. In fact, we should try something new. Do I have it here? If I have it here, we're trying something new. I'm looking. I know I have it. I do. I do. Hold on. We're trying this. Okay. Clean out this brush. I keep meaning to do this, but I also keep forgetting. So I'm using that UVLS, that clear coat, as kind of a protection coat, right? I'm putting it on there. Now that's also the clear that I put on a lot of the paintings too. Any of the ampersand paintings or the 543 paintings, those have UVLS satin as a clear coat on them. And it's fantastic. It's super strong. It has a great sheen to it. I love everything about it. And I also use that as a kind of a protection coat in between as I'm working on things. But in this case, I've wanted to try this for a while, but I keep forgetting. Autoborn sealer also, this is where you guys are too close up to really see this, but this is Autoborn, there it is, Autoborn sealer, sorry for the blur. And it's 6,000. It's essentially the Autoborn sealer without any color in it. It's transparent. It's called transparent sealer. And I know this is like after a long night of drinking when you're trying to read something, but trust me on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray this instead of the UVLS and see what happens. Because what could go wrong? So what I need to do, so I do need to reduce this. This is straight out of the bottle, so it's really thick. So I'm gonna, through this brush, I'm probably gonna have to reduce it at least 30 to 40%. So there we go. I've got it in the brush right there, which again, I know it's blurry because you guys are on the super zoomed in close-up range. But you get the idea. So there's my transparent sealer. So it's the first time I'm doing this, which will be good. The reason why I've wanted to do this is because the transparent sealer is the toughest stuff, or not the transparent, but the base coat sealers are the toughest stuff that Createx makes. So this stuff is really, really good. I shouldn't say that. The Scenics line might be tougher physically, but as far as the general purpose painting goes, this stuff is it. So to use this as a base coat is going to hopefully give me a much stronger protection from scuffing the edges. So what we did to spray this with the Autoborn sealer, we're basically going to do the same thing, except I don't have to put on as many coats. So I don't have to put on 4 coats. Really, probably 2 will do it. But what I definitely want to concentrate on are the edges of this thing, because that's what's going to take the most damage. So I got to kind of tilt my head and look at this from an angle, because obviously I can't see it being applied except for the wetness of it. So that's how I know I'm putting on too much. You don't want to flood this. You don't want, it's just like the other stuff. You know, you don't want to like hammer this stuff on. Just want enough coat so that it kind of changes sheen and starts to flow together, and then you quit. So I'm doing the edges first. Make sure I got them all nice and covered up. And then what I'll do is I'll do the rest of the face. And this is just kind of, as my buddy Chris Arpin says, this is just cheap insurance. I'm not going to scratch the front of it, but this will help just kind of make a continuous film across the whole blade of this sealer. And that's it. I'm going to wait on that because I do need to let that cure. So we're going to see, what time is it? We have 9 minutes. So unfortunately, this is not going to, you guys won't be able to see the next coat, but I think you get the idea. So what we'll do for the rest of this episode is prep the other templates. I'm going to lower the exposure a little bit too, because you don't need to be that bright. So already, see how it just kind of like, even without any of the color, that just kind of pops off the way it should. And I like that. I gotta, like, again, I do need to fix that little hitch at the bottom of the back wheel, but I'll do that when I do the tire. All right, so we're gonna put that aside and let that dry. Even now it's drying. I'll try to tilt it so you can see it. Get the light maybe at the right angle. Probably not. There it is. Yeah. So you can see the sheen on it. That's because it's still wet. But even there, it's not as shiny as it was when I first put it on. So even right now, it's drying. And again, by about 15 minutes in, 20 minutes in, that's going to be, I mean, I could sand that if I wanted to. So I'm not going to. But again, we're looking for protection because I don't want to spend the whole time at the end fixing the edge of the blade where it all scuffed off because I've been handling it. Another good reason for the magnet, I don't even have to touch the blade to move it, which is gigantic. All right, so let's cut some templates now, and that'll prep us for the next episode. So with this, I'm gonna do this like again, a lot of this stuff comes from doing these blades. So a lot of the techniques I just use the same on bigger paintings. So first thing I gotta do, now this car was in the shade of some trees, which I'm gonna omit. Do I? Yeah. I'm just making some decisions on this. Okay. And it's a Shelby, so it's got, you know, the black racing stripes on it too, which I gotta do. So what I'm thinking about doing is I'll cut out all of the red. The decisions I was making, if you look at the little photo here, see that dark area there and there, it was parked under a tree. And it was casting a shadow on the back of the car and then across, you know, this side here, which is why the wheel is so dark. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove those shadows because out of context, they don't make sense. And it's, you know, it's going to be pretty easy to do on this scale. If it was a bigger painting, I'd have more decisions to make because I'd have to basically relight the back end of the car. But in this instance, it's small enough where I can get away with a lot. So I'm going to cut out everything that's red on the car, basically. Because the red is going to be first. Oh, what a nice car this was. So with Shelby, and I'm not sure if they still do it the same way, but essentially what happens is when you want a Shelby Mustang, you will order it and Shelby will get it directly from the factory at Ford, and they will start ripping the thing apart and doing all the fun things that you want done to your car, which is a blast. So they do a lot. There's things they do to the motor, obviously, suspension, wheels, all that fun stuff. And again, this was a few years ago that I went, but I assume they still do it pretty much the same way. And if you're ever in Las Vegas, it is a good take to go and see the actual museum. There's a lot of great stuff in it. The black stripes you can barely see. I'm going to ignore them for now. You know, I could leave them out and just kind of spray them in after, but I think I'm just going to paint everything red and then deal with it. Again, it'll be easier than trying to cut out these tiny little black stripes that are on the top of this thing. Yeah, so the museum is great. A lot of great Carroll Shelby history there. There's obviously there's a lot of amazing cars there, from the Cobras and the old Mustangs, and just if you're into this particular car, it is an excellent time. Plus, I mean, you know, Vegas is Vegas. There's so many things to do. Including visit my buddy Ryan over at Counting Cars. It's always fun. All right, so everything that's red is coming out like that. What I didn't do, though, the front pillar here, oh, as I ruined this after I just took the time to make sure I didn't cut it out. I left the front pillar in so that the passenger window stayed in as well. So that's kind of a light blue. What did I do here? Did I come up there? No, because it's not red, it's black. Let's see if I did this right. Yeah, right enough. All right, so there's everything that's red right there. And what do we got? We still got 3 minutes. Well, we have 3 minutes. I still have about 7 or 8 minutes before I can hit that again with some more sealer. I do want to put 2 good coats on this. Let me grab it so you can see what the progress is on this since you've... So if I tilt it again just the right way, see how it's like more of a matte finish now? So it's getting there. It's getting there. And the same thing, like I said, if, say I sprayed this and there was a chunk of sealer, I could literally sand it. I mean, I have to be super careful at this point because I definitely don't want to burn through it. But yeah. And with any luck, you know, that's going to really do a good job at keeping the edges from getting damaged. And I just got to be careful not to bump it. So it's kind of a two-part thing. All right, so we have a few minutes, so let's cut out another template. The next template I think I'm going to do is the windows. Those are blue, like a sky blue. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking the reference photo and I'm breaking it down into major color groups. So obviously the red's got a lot going on in it, but it's still red. And the same thing with the windows. They got a lot going on in them, but overall they're blue. So like a pale blue. So if I get those blocked in that way, then I can do all the other fun stuff that comes with it. I quickly check to see if there's anything else that is this light blue? There is some of this on the front of the car. I want to do it with this. Do I? Huh. Yeah, paint what you see, right? So the back deck of this is also blue. So this is going to be fun because there's going to be red on this already. So this will give a good indication. And if I'm going to do that, where the sky is, you know, hitting that, I got to do the front too as well. And there's a pretty big scoop on this, but I'm going to ignore that for now because that's going to be a paintbrush trick later. So I'm just going to cut out basically the hood of the car, and that'll get me the blue there too. The wheel is gray, so I don't have to worry about that. There's little flecks of blue on the high sides, like on you know, right below the tail lights and right here. but I'll do those with a paintbrush too. So we'll be good with that. Oh, that's, no. Yeah, why not? Well, I mean, it's probably going to get lost in the shuffle, but I'll cut them out now and spray them in and see what happens. The worst thing that'll happen is they'll get covered up, and then I'll have to put them back in. Okay. How much of this? It's a fade. Very lovely. So this is a fade from blue into the regular color of the car. So what I'll do here is the trick that I always do. So I always remember that this is going to be a fade. I don't take it out, I just fold it back. Now I know it fades from here towards the fold. I think that's all for the blue, really. There's some, do I want to do that too? Yeah, why not? Oh, that's the antenna. And those are trees. Okay, good. So yeah, there's a spike that goes in here of blue in the back. I think that's going to be good. There's some other little bits of blue like on the wheel wells, but that's more of a thing that we'll add whenever we get a chance, when we get there. All right, so there we go. So we are prepped. So what I'm going to do to save you guys the aggravation is I will put that other coat of clear on the blade off camera. Again, you're not missing much. You've seen me do it. So when we get back next week, we can just start putting some paint on this. All right. So if you enjoyed this, thank you. Thanks for hanging out for the third premiere of the new time for Open Studio. So I truly appreciate it. Again, you guys, when you become members and throw super thanks and stickers and all that fun stuff, that's what drives all this, and I can't thank you enough. If you really want to be part of what's going on here, you can join the Patreon, and you get your own special Open Studio that only Patreon members get. So I do a separate painting just for the Patreon members as well. And that's what I got. All right, so I will catch you guys next week, and have a blast. This is Steve Leahy for Open Studio, and you guys are the best. I'll see you next week.